Hey Darren, how's it going? You all right?
Great, great.
All
So it
right,
sounds like
yeah.
you just came back from a nice, relaxing vacation.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, up in Wales, a place called Pembrokeshire, and it's really beautiful. It's like yeah, the corporates haven't got there yet. It's still these little quaint villages, no McDonald's, sort of local farm shops, and really, really pretty place. And we're staying in a campsite that overlooked the ocean, and it rains quite a bit up there, so we got hit with a little bit of rain, but we had some really stunning sunny days, so it was great fun. Just time with the family. It's always a good time. So yeah, back to reality, and yeah, it's a long weekend here. So Sunday night, tomorrow is a public holiday, which is good.
Yeah,
And
all
you, what have you
right.
been up to?
Well, I built a computer this week and it's been nothing but trouble for me. So just in case I disappear or will probably end up, I'll just like sort of freeze up. If it does happen, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, I freeze up. Just know it'll probably take me about a minute or two and then I'll sign back in and I'll appear again. So if that happens, just want to give everybody a warning. But so this
Fingers
week,
crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, it happened to me yesterday during my live stream, and it
Oh
was
God,
it was it was
nightmare.
sort of rough for me. But yeah, so today we are going to talk about. In fact, let me just bring up this thing here on the screen here. This is our app we've been building together. And Barry, this is our fourth episode.
Yeah, it's the fourth one, so it seems to be going quite well. So I'm trying to think back what we actually got. It seems like an age ago to me. So can you remind me what did we cover last week?
Sure. So, yeah, the first one we just sort of introduced ourselves. The second one we just talked about the absolute basics. I think we brought over this particular gallery. We created a SharePoint list. We created a form, and then the third one last week was we created a little drop down and we did some filtering. We did some sorting, and we never did get around to search. So I thought we'd talk about search
Yeah.
this time.
And yeah, this is like a good place to start. I think just the stuff that we've covered in the last four episodes. If you're a newbie, these are fundamental things that you need to know, right? I mean, have you ever built an app where you don't use any of this stuff?
Yeah, these are the your bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of getting started with
Yeah.
Power Apps. You need to learn about a gallery, you need to learn about a form, and learn how to use those together.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
the
and you
fill.
can save yourself a lot of time if you actually know what you're doing. Otherwise, you might just get confused, and then yeah, there's nothing worse than being confused and sitting and staring at your screen for like an hour and going, "What the hell am I doing?" So
Yeah,
yeah, we just go back and watch those, and I think that's going to give you a massive head start. And you don't have to. Yeah, otherwise you could be watching a lot of content and other videos, which is great because you learn little things. But it could also, cost you a lot of time having to jump through stuff. So I think this is just the fundamental stuff. Do it in line with anything else that you're doing. But even if you know your stuff, I'm sure there's little tips and tricks that we've covered in here. I know that I've learned some stuff from you just as we've been covering up in these podcasts, where it's like, oh my God, I didn't actually know that, and that's cool. That's going to save me some time in the
yeah,
future.
yeah. I like that. And I like so you come from a little bit of a different background than I do. I'm a software developer. You're more of a
Yeah.
general IT guy.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I'm in IT management and have been for a long time, but I also do technical stuff. So, this has been a sort of part-time hobby for me, and I've over the last few years I've got into it. But I'm nowhere near as technical as you. But I've obviously built a few apps now, so I do understand PowerApps. But you come from a development background, so your technical depth in terms of development is a lot deeper than mine. So I come from more of a, how can we leverage this technology to automate some of our processes within the business and allow people to get things done quicker. And also, it's great to have a standardized way of capturing information within your business, because if you leave it to different teams or different mechanisms of collecting data, you get data that's different. And when you've got silos of data that are formatted differently, it's always hard to report on. And then obviously if you want to drive change, you have to understand the data that you get in. So using a Power App across your business collects data in a standard way. You can take that data and then leverage it to learn a bit more about your business and your users.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at the comments here. Victor's back. Hi there. Greetings from Valencia, Spain.
Hey Victor, hope you're
Yeah,
well.
nice to have
Spain,
you.
I love Spain. I love Spain.
And if anybody else is joining us, feel free to shout out. At least tell us where you're from and what you're doing with Power Apps, and I'll give you a shout out there.
And I know we're covering specific things. We like trying to maybe keep a flow on what we're doing. But obviously, if there's anything that you guys, you've joined for a reason, you might be wanting to know a little bit. Obviously, if it's not too advanced, we'll do our best to cover it off in the show as well. But do ask any questions that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So taking a look at our project here, I've got it up on the screen. And here is our gallery. Now, if I open up the coding window here, this is where we left off last week. So we had a good filter in here, and it doesn't look like we're doing any type of sort.
Yeah, just quickly, Darren, just as a refresh, I know we did a recap in general, but just to recap what we've got here, we've got a SharePoint list as a backend. We've got a few columns in the SharePoint list, which is some properties of our user. And then we've got that box on the left-hand side of your screen. Yeah, that's what we've got there: date of birth, name, all that sort of stuff, country. Where the mouse is pointing over now, that is our gallery. So basically, a list of everything, selected columns in our SharePoint list is displayed there. And then when we click on any item in our gallery, on the right-hand side, we've got a form that shows all the details associated to that record in the SharePoint list, so the title, phone number, email address. So that's basically what we had, and I think we had the drop-down list there to filter, where we said, right, if we only want to show people that are in the UK, drop that down, and then it's so go back and have a look at the videos if you want to see how that works. But that's what we're working from now, just so you don't get lost when you look at it and go, what the hell are you guys actually doing here? So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. One thing that I always like to do with my gallery, if there's things that you always do to almost every single gallery, let me know what you think. Have you ever worked with template fill?
Yeah, it took me. Yeah, I've, and we're talking about the color, the background, right? Within the gallery, I've used it actually in a recent app because I wanted to, when I had specific orders, ones that had been completed, I wanted to change them to gray. Or if there were ones that were in progress, green, all that sort of stuff. So that template fill was really handy for that sort of stuff. And it's nice to be able to differentiate in your list, so select the color in the box based on whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So whenever you hear the word template while working with gallery, it's talking about an individual item within the gallery. So whatever you change for that template. So if you're trying to make, let's say, a label inside your gallery, take up the full width or the full height, you could say inside, let's say for this little label here, if I wanted that to take up the full width, over here on the width, I go over here to the right side, click on the word width, and I get this 285. Now, it doesn't have to be a number. We can type some code in here that would evaluate to a number, such as if I say parent within an item within the gallery, the first item is the only one that you can edit, of course, right? So you say parent. Now that will give us a reference to the gallery. Okay, so I say parent, and I can say template. Okay, so whenever you see it took up the full width there.
All right.
So we're using the word template there. So it's talking about an individual item within the gallery. So if I click on the gallery itself and then go find the property that we were just talking about, the template fill.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that it's set up to be white. Now, a lot of times what you want to do is put some logic in here, and based on the logic, you can do different things. Okay, so for example, and I think we had mentioned we want to go over the if statement because I don't really think that we've gone over that yet.
Yeah.
And an if statement, or it's pretty much a function. Everything you use inside of PowerApps is going to be a function that you put in code here. So for example, if I were to type if, okay, if takes at least 2 parameters, sometimes 3. The third parameter is optional. Typically, you do provide full 3 parameters. Now, the first parameter is going to be a Boolean value. Barry, are you familiar with what Boolean means? If you ever hear Boolean,
yes. Yeah, and this is an important one, right? Because it comes up a lot in PowerApps. So Boolean is just yes, no, right? Yes, no. This is either a binary response.
Yeah. So if I want to know, see what I want to do is I always like to color whichever item in the gallery is selected. I want to change its color. So that's what I'm trying to do here. How is it, Barry, that I could know if the one particular item is selected. Do you know that?
If this item got selected.
Yeah.
Oh, what a guess.
You're actually right.
Wow.
It's selected. All right, very good. And you know what? When you learn stuff, it's actually, I don't know if you remember your time back at school, but good teachers always ask a question before they tell you stuff. I probably need to do that more, because I have this personal belief, like when somebody asks you a question, even if you don't know it, but you happen to know it, okay? But if you don't know it, it's good to even be asked if you don't even know the answer, because your brain sort of goes to the place in your brain that it would expect to be there. And it's like, well, I have a blank there. I don't know. You just did it, and you found the information there in your brain, right?
And a lot of the time you find that it's a logical, it's a logical response, right? If this item is selected, and try it, right? Because there's loads of things. Like sometimes I'll be like, what is it? Excuse me. But if they
we'll have to edit that out.
Start typing something in, then it comes up, and you go, oh, okay, that is an option, and you can just follow through. So definitely, just try stuff as well. But so this, if this item dot is selected, so that's this item. Can you just talk a little bit about this item? What does that actually mean again?
So the keyword this item, and it has to do with the context in which you use it. So you're going to be using inside of a gallery, and we're working within every particular row. There will be this little expression will be evaluated. When I say evaluated, it means it's going to be sort of run, or we'll sort of test it to see what the value is. Okay, so that this item is the current record in question, and then that question is run for every single one of these. So it's the current row.
Yeah, and is it only applicable to galleries, this item, or is it also in forms?
I would imagine if they were to create another control like a gallery, because you have other repeater, you have different
it's a
controls.
repeater. So because it's a repeater, it's this item in the gallery. The form isn't really a repeater. It's just showing you what the parent is, what the selected item is, right? The details of that.
So you have other controls that you could provide a list, okay? Like a list box, a combo box, a drop down, a data table control. These are all things that you could give it a table worth of values, or an array of, or a list of values. But the gallery is special because it's the only control that I know of that they have out there that you can actually put code inside of for each of the rows. So to answer your question, I think this is the only way you can use this item is inside of a gallery. I can't think of any other controls, and I hope they create more controls like this. But I think that's the only way you can use that. So okay, I do see a comment come in here. Is it possible to identify if this item is the first item? And that's a good question. Let me, Roberto, thanks for the question. I'm going to answer that here in just a moment, okay? And I just sort of want to get through this if then else. So we just sort of tackle one thing at a time, but I'm going to come back to you. So we have this item is selected, okay? So the very first parameter, and when we talk about passing parameters into something, we're talking about a function. And whenever you have some code in the PowerFX language here, where you're using parentheses, you're passing parameters, and you separate those parameters with commas. So the very first one is going to be a Boolean. This is selected is going to give us a true or false value. So sometimes I'll see people say is selected equals true. And that's not really, I mean, it's okay if you did that. It's not really necessary because we already have a true or false value. So if it's true, I always like the background or the fill, such as template fill, to be light yellow.
So just to cover off there, where you said if this item dot is selected, you could have said equals true, but you don't have to put that.
Yeah, you could have. Yeah, I could have said true.
Yeah, maybe leave it in because it just sort of it helps people.
Yeah, if it helps you learn, absolutely. Coming from a programmer background, computer programmer, it would be seen as redundant and sort of frowned on. But we're not all software developers though either.
It helps you just understand. So the Boolean, it's a Boolean. It's either true or false. So we've said if this is selected, then if that is true, then you go into the if statement.
And if you look at this equal sign, and so the PowerFX language is sort of like a programming language, okay? So also the equal sign, that itself is called in programming languages called an operator. And an operator like the equal sign, greater than, less than, it will give you a Boolean value as well. So that's why we're, again, getting a Boolean value even by doing that equals true. So that's the first parameter that you're going to provide in an if function. And then the other two, the second one is, if it is true, what do you want to have happen? Or what do you want to return from that function? So functions typically return a value. They don't have to. Like we could use the function back that will take us back to the previous screen. That's not, I don't know that it's really returning any value. But if you ever use the function called patch, if you're a beginner, maybe you haven't used the patch function. The patch function allows you to update a record, okay? It will actually return a value. A lot of people don't realize it actually returns that record that was updated. So if you ever need to patch something, a patch of one record, and then throw that value into a variable, you could actually use the value that's returned from that. So just thought I'd give you that as a bonus. So the second parameter, this light yellow here, is what it's going to return if this is true. And then the other one is the else block, which is if this is false, then it's going to do this.
And because it's a template fill, it's expecting a color in the if statement, right? So if this logical test is true or false, then return a color. You couldn't put something else in there, right? It has to be a color.
Yeah, so in this context of the template fill, it is expecting a color. However, we could use a if then else. Check this out. I can copy this and I could have a little label inside this gallery. And what we could do inside this this label here for the text. Now, this is not a color. I'm going to paste this in, and instead of providing colors, I can return strings. Okay, and I could say this is selected. Okay. Can you see down here, this one is selected? It's colored in yellow, and it actually says this is selected. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's cool. So, but so the template fill is a color property, therefore you can only use a color. And with the other one, it's you're not limited to. You're putting a text in. So I know I've got a little bit confused when trying to set colors and trying to put a different type of value in there, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And perhaps we could do a whole episode on colors, because there's all kinds of functions that you can use for colors. You don't have to give it a name. You can give it a hexadecimal value.
Yeah.
You could you could take a color and do a color fade. Yeah. And you can either
that's what they do by default, don't they? They always put color fade. I've never used the color fade. I always just replace it with a color. But if you look at the default, it normally has fade, whatever. So I'd be quite interested to see how that actually works, because I don't really use it in my apps.
What's sort of cool is if you have a color and you got something in your interface where you want to fade it very gradually, you can have a slider control. You could slide that and it could fade it on a degrees, and you can do some really cool stuff with that. Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting topic to cover.
Yeah, so let's look at Roberto's question here. Is it possible to identify this item as the first item in the gallery? And I would say yes. Is it possible? And what I'm going to do here in order to answer this question, I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm going to insert a label at the top. And then what I'm going to say here is I'm going to compare two things. I'm going to compare what it is in the first item. So let's get this little border here. Okay. And let's open this up a little bit. And what I'm going to say here is I need the name of the gallery. So I'll grab that. And we'll say the gallery dot selected dot ID. Is that the same as gallery dot all items? That's going to give us all the items that are in the gallery, and we could use a function called first. Okay, so it's going to give us the first record out of the gallery, and then now that we have the record, we can say dot ID. Look what it says here. It says true. It actually gave us that Boolean value. So, what we could do is, this isn't very user friendly. A user may not want to see true or false. Like, what's that about? Well, we could put another if statement in here. If we already know this is giving us a Boolean value, if that's true, you say the first item has been selected. Okay. And then I'm going to change it up a little bit and say, we're not even going to provide an else. That's it. So if I click on something else, there'll be nothing in there.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And when you've just go back to the snippet of code that you entered to get that working. So if gallery arc gallery contacts dot selected dot id, is that dot id the same ID that's sort of hidden in SharePoint? That is a row ID. So that's the match.
It is, right? And it's always going to be unique, which is important here. So we could have compared, let's say, this. What is in this value here? We could have grabbed any of the values in here. So there's the ID. It's always going to be unique. We could have compared phone numbers or anything, really. But it's always good to reference ID because it's going to be unique. Because
that ID column. Sorry about that. That ID column, is that something that's generated by SharePoint automatically, or did we create that? I can't remember now.
It is. It is.
We just unhid it, didn't we? Because you went in there and you said show the ID column, which was.
I did. In fact, that's the very first thing I do whenever I create a list. Is I'll go in here and say in the add column menu, I'll go hide show columns, and I'll make sure that ID is selected. And I'll move it all the way to the top, so always see it there. Because it's sort of helpful while you debug. Like if you don't know, maybe something's going on. Let's say here within this gallery, we could. I'm going to add in another label here. Insert label. I'm going to put this in here, maybe to the side, and I'll write justify it. And it already has this item.id. Look at that. So there's all the IDs.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And how often do you actually interact with the ID of a SharePoint list row? Like to pull out IDs? Was it just something that
I do it all the time? I do it all the time because if you have any database training, it's what's called a primary key. Mm-hmm. And it is whenever you work with databases, records within a database table, such as a SharePoint list in this case, you need to know what the unique identifier is for that. And typically in any database table that you create, it needs to have a primary key. So most people don't know this, but SharePoint actually is using a SQL Server underneath the scenes there for its data. Oh. Yeah. So and typically when you're creating stuff in SQL Server, there is a field called identity. If you've ever worked with Microsoft Access, it's called an auto number. Mm-hmm. But you create an identity type of column. And that's the first thing I do when I create a database table in SQL Servers. I'll create a table and I'll create ID, just how they do it in SharePoint here. Uppercase, identifier, ID. And then I set as an identity, and it just auto increments. And if you don't do something like that, there's some database people, they'll do something else, like a date timestamp. Yeah. I don't really like that because it could, somebody's inserting something at the same time. It could come in at the exact same time. You never know. Mm-hmm. But you got milliseconds in there, but still there could be a chance somebody could come at the same time and add a record. Yeah. So it really wouldn't be unique unless you append other things in there. Another thing people do is use a GUID or a globally unique identifier. Have you ever seen those before?
Yes, those horrible long numbers. Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. If I go into sometimes you'll see a GUID, but what a GUID looks like, let me just show this real quick. I'll bring another label over. I love adding random labels to my PowerApps screen here. And you can say GUID. It's actually, I believe it's a function here. Yeah. So this is going to be a unique identifier. You working in IT, you're probably used to seeing GUIDs in the Windows networking system.
Active Directory users.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. So, and that is guaranteed to be unique. And what it does is it goes to I believe the MAC address for the network card is being used, whatever system that you're on. In this case, we're probably dealing with the cloud server and Microsoft's system that's grabbed, and it also takes the date timestamp and creates something like crazy unique.
So that GUID is from the SQL backend for that particular record that you just called it. Or what is that actually referencing? Oh no, it's too advanced.
Okay, so this is how we created this. Is we use this GUID function. Now, how PowerApps gets it, I can't really say for sure without doing. I can do some speculation for you, but.
So that's actually just generated a GUID for us. It's not actually referencing a GUID related to the record that we clicked on there.
Right.
Okay. It's just generating a GUID. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's useful to know that you can just generate one that you could use. But a quick question going back to, I know we spoke about IDs and the SharePoint list. Do you use IDs? Let's say you had, you might want to reference an order in one list and maybe a customer in another list, and then do you link the primary keys? And is that what the ID is used for as well?
I do. So, for example, let me show you a typical database diagram. So over on my channel on Saturdays, what I do is I go through, and right now I'm teaching people how to, that's pretty much what I do on my channel. I teach people go through of how to build a full system. Right now we're doing an IT ticketing system, service desk, help desk, trouble ticket. There's all kinds of different names it goes under. But here's a full ERD diagram, and ERD stands for Entity Relationship Diagram. So pretty much what you're going to find in an ERD diagram is you're going to find all your database tables, and you're going to see hopefully all of your columns, but most importantly, you're always going to see the primary key and then a foreign key. So, Barry, you work in IT. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of ticketing systems, right? Somebody needs some help with something. There's going to be a ticket generated. You have some software to manage that. So this is pretty much a ticket table. It's for requests. So in all my tables, you can see at the very top, there's going to be an ID, like I told you. Now, over in other tables, you'll see some things like right here. If you see a line between tables, okay, you'll see with request assignments. So if a ticket comes in, Barry, we work in the IT department, and something comes in, I know only Barry handles that type of stuff. I'm going to assign it to you. This database table here called request assignments is going to keep track of that. Well, there is a field here called request ID. So if this is the very first ticket that came in, at the beginning of time or the beginning of this system, it's going to be 1. And then I'm going to assign it to you. That's going to be, the ID is going to be 1. But down here for request ID is going to be 1. So I'll know as I'm looking at the data, I could do a filter or do a lookup based on that ID and go find the associated data between these relationships.
Okay. So those filtering commands on the galleries can get quite complex depending on how many backend lists or databases, tables you're working with.
Yes, but you typically only deal with one at a time. Now there would be an exception that now you can't in databases. There's relational database systems. You have a language called structured query language. It's not really a programming language like C or C++. It's a query language, so it allows you to query data. And there is a concept called a join. So you can grab data from this table and this table. You can join them together based on these relationships, and it will give you a one big result set from both the tables in a certain way, depending upon how you structure the query. There's no real way of doing that inside of PowerApps. How you sort of do that in PowerApps is you use lookups and you use filters.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so I think as a future one, well, I'll make a note. I'd be interested myself just to understand when you would use multiple lists versus just putting everything in one list, and when you do that, how do you link them together? So I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. So as we build out perhaps another related table, as we build out this application, Barry. So right now we have contacts. Well, each contact might belong to a company. So we could have a companies table. And then each of these contacts will have a field in there called company ID, and it would refer over there. Now, I actually have a video. If you do a search in here, YouTube, and say Darren Neese relationships, let's see if it comes up right away. Yeah, it's the first results that says how to set up relationships in PowerApps, and it's just a little 12-minute video, and it shows exactly how I set that up. However, we'll be doing all that in this series, just as we sort of progress and add on more features and tables and such.
Cool, thanks.
And it looks like we have some more comments here. So Victor says, how do you filter between a range of birth dates in this example? Let's say a person older than 30, so that you can use search function in the filtered result is less than 500 and starts with if it's higher. All right. Well, that sounds like we're getting a little complicated, huh?
Sounds pretty complicated to me.
So what I'd want to do, Victor, is sort of break that down a little bit. And then after we break it down individually, then we could sort of put them together. If you try to tackle one big, querying statement, especially if it's your first time, it can be really overwhelming. So I definitely recommend doing one thing at a time. So Barry, I know what we plan on covering tonight is search, and I also put in there starts with, because those two things sort of go together in a lot of ways. So we're definitely going to get to that tonight. So I just, before we get too deep into that, I wanted to ask you about all the types of stuff that you do on your website. What's the name of your website again?
So PowerAppify.com. So
I'm going to try to type that in again. PowerAppify, right?
Yeah, .com. For some reason, sometimes try HTTPS www. It's a platform I'm using behind that seems to act a bit weird when you just type in the PowerAppify.com.
Okay, there you go. I think it needs a www in there.
Yeah,
maybe that's
what
it is.
So what we do here on our website is we develop applications that can be used for, I suppose, entry-level teams, like IT teams who want to get involved with Power Apps. So it's nothing too advanced, but it's some applications that you can get up and running in your team. We've got a hardware ordering app. We've got software or service application request app. We've got a launch digital launch pad, and we'll be adding more applications in here. And basically, two of these are free. You can just download them, play with the code, customize them, just have a look at how we've done things in there. And then there is a paid for one, which is the IT ordering app, and that's a shopping basket app where you can order stuff. Or let's say a user wants to order a new starter kit, laptop and screens and all that sort of stuff.
Now, are you talking about this one right here, this IT ordering app? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have a question. Why are you charging so much for that?
£5.99. So it's really a way to learn how to do things. A lot of the work's been done in there. So for me, I'm not out to make a lot of. I'm not charging a fortune for it. I'd like to get people to download it, have a look at it, see how it's done, make it available for people who are interested in getting into Power Apps but haven't really used it and going, well, what kind of app can I build? Right, these apps that I've created here are for IT departments or HR departments. So I'm working on an HR one at the moment. So it's ones that you could, for a small to medium-sized business, you can download and start using it, within the day if you follow the instructions, and you can customize it for your.
So for the price of a coffee, you could get a fully functional app, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
And even if you, it took me a long time to build these, right? So there's a lot of stuff in there that you can, if you go in like, oh God, I could spend weeks just trying to understand how to put all this together. You could go in here and replicate the code, even if you're just learning, and it's all done for you. So my goal for PowerAppify.com is to help introduce people into Power Apps and then get them leveraging it and give them some ideas and some use cases, and then help them on their journey and get teams more involved.
Do you have any good solid documentation with this?
Yeah. So everything comes with documentation, so you can replicate that and use it within your business as well. So there's a list of exactly what comes with those apps in there. So go over there, have a look at it, download it, start using it in your business. Get it up and running. And it's not only the app. It's actually, I try and include the whole process. So how do you manage a hardware ordering app? There's some flowcharts in there, and just some general guidance on how to implement it. Obviously you got to leverage like they call a CMDB, configuration management database. So how do you track your assets? So every time you purchase some assets, you want to make sure that the serial numbers are captured, stored in your CMDB. You know who it's allocated to, and all this sort of stuff. But asset management's a big challenge for businesses, especially with a lot of people remote working. So these type of apps certainly help. It also helps with the reporting, who's purchased what, how much are you spending, how much do you anticipate, like budgeting, how much do you anticipate to spend versus what was actually spent. So and that's leveraging some of the other tools like Power BI in the back end.
Yeah, I was asking about your documentation. I think I saw a screenshot of your documentation. I was actually really impressed by it. Is it available here, or do you have to purchase in order to see it?
It comes with the package. So whenever I make any update, I actually keep it on Confluence. But whenever I package or make some changes, I download it into PDF, and then just you could just download it with the application. Comes with it.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Cool.
So I do have a request of everybody. You ready?
Hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated.
I need to create one specifically for this podcast. Okay, so getting back to this application here, we're definitely going to do a search. And I want to make sure we're keeping up with the comments as well here. And Victor follows up that to avoid delegation. And so, Victor, yeah, I'd like to get around to all that if we do have time tonight. But I'm going to be honest, Victor, these are great questions. These are things that I want to get around to. So let's make sure we catch up to all the comments here. So Johan, in addition to Roberto's question, is it possible to determine a gallery row number based on the value of this item? Yes. That's a little bit more advanced. It would probably open up a can of worms that we could probably spend a whole hour on, to be honest. So I don't know, Barry, I don't know if you want to create maybe a Google document or something, and we'll put in a list, or I can start a Google document, and we just keep a list of all the things that we want to get to, because I know you were asking me before we were doing this session, hey, what all do we plan on covering tonight? And what I want to do is I don't want to get to like our 10th video or our 10th episode, and it's like, there were some really good questions that we never addressed.
I'll make a note of them, Darren. I got it.
Yeah.
And just so I understand that question, is it possible to determine a gallery row number? So could you use the ID for that? I mean, would that be the row number, or?
It would be tempting to use it. However, that would only work if no one's ever deleted. So if I delete your record, Barry, and I added you, you would no longer have 2. In fact, there would never be a record with an ID of 2 ever again.
Right. Okay.
So that would sort of mess it up. Otherwise, yeah, you could use the ID. There's actually a use case where, let's say you've got a gallery here and you want every other record to have like a different color. Sometimes people like to do that in like a grid type of thing. And you actually do it the same way of how I would show you guys how to do this, as Johanna is asking about. So yeah, let's circle around back to that one eventually here. And Abdi says, hello, everyone. Hello, Abdi. Oh, he's a PowerApps guru.
Hey, Abdi, how's it going?
Very cool. And Data is King is here. All right. Very good. Yeah.
Good evening.
I have purchased this app. It's quite good. Also have good guide. Okay. So he's actually purchased your application.
Oh, thanks, Abdi. That's great.
Yeah. All right. But that will course issue on delegation. So as we run up against delegation issues, we sort of want to point that out, and we'll sort of talk through that. We definitely don't want to have any delegation issues. We might have some delegation warnings, and we'll deal with those appropriately. Okay, so let's get around, and if we cover search completely, then we'll go back through these comments and see how many of these we can answer, okay? Barry, what do you think? Does this view on the screen look best, or does this view look best? I know.
Yeah, I think that one.
This one right here.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think in the comments? I mean,
yeah.
I'm happy with this one. I think if we can get the screen as big as possible, with the actual, the content on it.
What my thought is, if we put ourselves down here, we might cover up something.
Yeah.
So
I think that one.
Okay, so I'm going to move this gallery down just a little bit, and I'm going to catch this one comment that just came in. Hi, everyone. Sergio, when creating the data model, do you consider the creation of the relationship columns in SharePoint of the text line type or search type? Do you understand what Sergio is asking here?
When creating the data model, do you consider the creation of the relationship columns in SharePoint of the text? Is it a text? I'm not 100% sure. Can you clarify, Sergio? Is it?
I'm thinking. So I always use ID. As we've talked about, it's like a primary key, and in the foreign key, what I do in the other table that relates back to that primary key in that other table, I'll create a number value that will also, if it's a 1 in that other table, it's just going to have a 1 there. So I always use numeric types for that, unless you're going to be using those GUIDs that we talked about. You could use a text type if you wanted to.
It's just is he referring to just the format of that column? Is it a text format, or is it a number format?
So if that's what he means by that, then the answer is no. If it's, I always want that to be a number. If you just have a SharePoint list of, let's say, city names. So see, we got this little country thing here. We could have a separate SharePoint list and just has one column and just has the names of all the countries. Instead of putting that, names of countries won't change. Hopefully
that would become your primary key, is the names of countries, because
it could. But here's a question for you. If we were using USA as that country name, and 5 years down the road, we're like, we really want to spell all the country names out. We don't want any acronyms. We want to say United States of America. Then you got to go back and change it everywhere that was pointing back to that. So that's where it sort of becomes problematic. And I think it's a poor practice. I mean, it's a small project, who cares? But if it's going to become a large project, and sometimes you never know, sometimes people really love the program that you create in PowerApps, and it just grows and grows, and over a few years it's become a huge application.
And that's a bit of gold dust right there, right? Because you don't want to have to be going and changing something that complicated later on. So best practice is just use a number at the beginning, something that's not going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So to do a search, and what we'll do is we'll do a search probably on the people's name. Okay. So let's add in a text box where somebody could type in some search here. So there's a text input. Okay. Now I don't want the words text input to be there. In fact, I'm going to utilize a property called hint text. Do you ever use hint text?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's slightly grayed, isn't it? And it just tells the user what to do in that text box without actually, putting some text in there.
And what I'll do is I'll make this just as wide as the gallery here.
And do you ever use the tooltip as well? Because there's that. What is that called?
In fact, as we're setting up the search, we could set this up to do search inside the title. Okay, so the names are stored in title. But we also might want to search in, let's look at all of our columns here. What if they want to search for phone numbers? That's fairly unique as well. So if you know somebody's phone number and you don't know their name, we want to search in that well. So let's say we're going to search for the name and the phone number. Well, we could actually say in here in the hint text to say, search for client contact name or phone number. Or we could just say search. And then down at the very bottom, there's a property that you hinted at using this tooltip. And we can actually say searches in contacts full name. Lost focus there. Need all that uppercase. Let me make it all lowercase.
Yeah, and while Darren's typing, it's always useful to put in as much information, right? Because what might seem simple to you, there's always someone who will come along and go, oh my God, and try and break it. So the more help that you can provide for users in the business, the better.
So let's say I wanted to list out, I've got maybe 8 columns that the search is going to search on. Well, I wouldn't want to, that would sort of clutter up this bar, right? But now, since we have the tooltip, we hover over this and look at that, searches and context, full name and phone number. So we can provide all kinds of information in the tooltip.
You can't actually change the size of that. I know it's coming quite small there. Generally, it comes up bigger than that, I thought. But you can't change the size of that tooltip, can you?
I don't know of any way
I
how
don't think
to
so.
do that.
Yeah, I haven't come across it.
I believe it's either controlled by the browser, but I think it's probably more importantly controlled by the system. So like Windows, I'm running Windows 11.
Yeah.
So I believe it would probably be, and it may not. You probably have to make a registry edit change, perhaps, or some other change to actually increase that. But okay, so we've got a little text box that we could type in here. Okay, so we've got that. And then what we want to do is we need to change our query for our gallery. So we want to display this here. Now I need to make sure I got the gallery selected. I'm going to go find the items property. And that's right here. Okay, there is our filter. Okay, now let's search. We'll use this as a data source, and we'll wrap the search around this. We're going to start nesting these things here. So we'll say search. It's going to be a function. So I've got the opening parenthesis, and I'm hit Control N, and at the very bottom, I'm going to use a closing parenthesis. I'm going to indent a filter. Okay. So the very first parameter that we're going to give the search is the source. Do you see that? Right where my cursor is moving around here, there is the syntax in which we need to use if you ever heard the word syntax means the rules of the language that you're trying to use. In this case, it's PowerFX. Okay. And we've got this search function within PowerFX. The first parameter is the source. So whatever filter gives us is going to be our source. Okay, that's the first parameter. Now, to go on to the second parameter for search, we need to use a comma.
And PowerApps doesn't care if it's you nesting things. There's no limits in terms of what you can nest, because it's quite easy to get lost in the structure of how the commands nest in. And I suppose a lot of the way of working around that is how you format it, right, in that window, like you put all the indents in. So to help you not get confused, because if you remove that format, it would just be a long line of text, which could be confusing.
Yeah, that's true. The indentation that you see me put in there sort of helps keep things straight as things get bigger and bigger and more complicated. And when you open it up and it's nice and formatted, it looks much cleaner. And you see these little vertical lines in here; those sort of help you keep sorted out as well, keep everything nice and organized. And Data is King says, I have found that adding comments is very important, especially when you have multiple filters and searches. Okay. So for example, well, you know what? I'll add comments whenever I'm done here. Let me go ahead through here. So text is what we want to search for. Now let me go over to the tree view control. And I have it named text input. So shame on me. I didn't give that a meaningful name. Let's give it a meaningful name. How should we name our controls? Let's say for a text input, Barry.
Well, I normally txt underscore and keep those lowercase. And then I normally put a capital for underscore and then a capital for whatever I call it.
Okay. So here, like search criteria.
Yeah.
Or even just search. Now, I personally, I don't use the underscores there. Is that was that like a best practice from where you were working before, or did you
just something I'm used to? Obviously, it's
some cases,
preference.
In some cases, people will put underscores just to sort of separate names and stuff, and in some cases, it looks better. So for this case, I'm gonna leave that underscore in there. All right, so we'll use that. Now I'm gonna click on that. I'm gonna hit Control C. All right, now I'm gonna go back in here, and for the text that we're searching for, I'm going to paste in that text box name, the text input, and I'll say .text. Okay, so that's what we're looking for, whatever's in there. Now I'm going to enter another comma there, and for the third parameter, it wants to know what columns. Okay, so I know the full name is put into the title column there. Okay, Now you notice title does appear down here, but it's got double quotes on both sides. There are some functions that you just can't give it the name of the column. It wants it to be inside of double quotes, which means it wants to work with it as a string. Okay, so I'm going to select that title. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to add on another column. So the third parameter is actually sort of, you can have multiple things as the third parameter. So third parameter and also going on. So we're going to say phone number. And let's see if we can see it. It is in double quotes there. So I'm going to select that one. Okay. And I'll move that down there. Okay. So we do have double lines here. What do double lines mean when you see them, Barry?
Double lines. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, if we hover over, you ever seen any red squigglies? Typically in arrow.
Yeah. It's an arrow.
Have you ever seen it? You hover over that line.
Yeah.
So in this case, we see two double lines. If you hover over that, it's giving us a warning, delegation warning. The search part of the formula might not work correctly on large data sets. Okay.
That's a common delegation warning. Don't panic when you see it.
Yeah, that's the delegation. If you see that, you might want to think about doing things a little differently. So here's the deal with search. If you're working with SharePoint data, you really don't want to use search unless you know the data that's in there is never going to exceed that 2,000 record limit. And just as a review, I think we talked about this in a previous video, but I'm going to go into settings. So if I go up here to the top, it says settings over here. I click on it. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see data row limit. The default is 500, and you can increase that up to 2,000. 2,000 is the upper limit. You cannot increase it any more than that. So if you always know what the data source you're working with is always going to be under that 2,000, you can ignore that warning if you want to. Okay, if you really want that search. Now that search is going to find whatever we type in the text box anywhere inside their full name and anywhere inside their phone number. Okay, but we have that delegation warning. So this statement is going to give you delegation issues if you're working with SharePoint as a data source. If you are working with Dataverse, you don't have that problem. You need, when you set up that column within Dataverse, say this title here, there's a little checkbox like allow sort or allow search on this column. You want to make sure that's enabled. I think it's set up by default. So if you know you're never going to, search on, you can uncheck it. But
so is the delegation an actual performance issue, or is it a limitation issue?
It's a limitation.
Yeah.
So PowerApps can only work with up to 2,000. By default, it's 500, but you can set up to 2,000. And it really is more dependent upon, and really there's no reason for PowerApps to display like 2,000 records on the screen, right? So what you want to do is you want to delegate that query. You want to delegate that work of querying and finding exactly what you want to the data source. SharePoint says, no, I'm not going to do that work. You just take all this data. And and PowerApps is like, no, I only want 2,000.
Yeah, but it but also, I mean, could it be a performance issue because you're returning all that data to your app, therefore more memory consumption? Could it? Offload it to the back?
I haven't had too much. If you're working, if you've got like 20 queries on one screen, then I would say yes.
Yeah.
If you just have
simple apps like this,
2 or 3 queries, probably not that big of a deal. If you have somebody running your PowerApps on a device that doesn't have a lot of memory, that could be an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say there is, if you query Dataverse in the same way, Dataverse is like, yeah, I'll do that. It won't return everything. It'll just return exactly what you're looking for. So that's sort of like the upside to paying for that premium license. Get that. Okay. Looking back
and with this, so as you type in text into the text box, because you put the text box as being the source of the string that you're trying to search, it's going to start doing it as you type in, right? So it's going to start. Well, that's pretty cool. So you don't have to have a button there that says search now. after you've typed it out or anything like that. And would there ever be a case where you might want to wait until you've typed it all in and then click search now? I can't think of one.
I guess it depends. It depends on the situation.
Yeah. Okay. I can't think of one. I don't think so. So
Yeah.
cool. All right. That's nifty.
So I left Data is King's comments up here because I just wanted to make sure I didn't, because it's very easy to put these in here. Okay. So for the search, this is data source provided. Okay. And then comment here. This is the string of text.
Do you go into that level of detail? Because my habit is just to put a comment at the top of the thing, just saying at the top of the command, just going, this is what it's doing. Do you actually break it up like that?
In something like this, I wouldn't. However, I've had queries like this that could be like 100 lines of code.
Right.
And in that case, even if you're the person who wrote the code and you're the person that's maintaining it and you're looking at it a month later, then you still might want to create comments for yourselves. It's really useful if multiple people are working on it or somebody else is.
Just a point while you're talking about comments, because sometimes when you create an app, there's lots of hidden properties where you might be writing these lines of code somewhere deep in the app, and that you might forget where you've actually written that code and where it is actually executing. So sometimes I might put at the comments of an on select button that you would always go to on a screen, and then just go, well, I've set this code somewhere on this property that does this, just so it's a reminder, like, oh, actually, this is where that funny thing's happening within the app.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk also about the other way of doing comments. So you can have inline comments. So you have 2 forward slashes, and anything after those 2 forward slashes is going to become a comment. And also I use comments to sort of disable code. So sometimes you're like, oh, I don't need that code anymore. Well, a lot of times instead of deleting it, you might want to copy and paste from it in the future. So I just comment things out sometimes. You can do a block quote. So you do a / and then somewhere on another line, do a * / everything between those two is going to become a comment.
Yeah, because I've done that before, deleted some code, and then you're going like, oh, I should have left it there. So you can always come back and tidy it up later, right? When you're definitely not going to use it again. Then.
Absolutely. So thanks, Data is King. And it looks like I missed one comment up here by my channel. Really good content, guys. Doing episode 3 in the series, not seeing it as a part of your previous series. Okay.
So that was the last one. If you're on my channel, I haven't uploaded it, but if you're on Darren's, I think you did upload it. So
let's see here. Now we do have this is a real podcast where we have an audio version of it. So all 3 of those, and then this will be added to it. And we're looking into perhaps perhaps we need to look into it and see what's involved, but we could actually live cast this to Barry's YouTube channel at the same time. That probably would be helpful so that everything is it's going everywhere in the right spot. So so my channel, so everything should be, let me see here. If I go into, so I see by this little icon, so he is coming from YouTube, and the only way that that's streaming through YouTube is on my YouTube channel right now. So I'm looking here on my channel. So here we have this. So this is number 4. Now, if you go into here, of course, I need to mute myself as soon as I get in here, which I am. I'm going to pause it. In the comments, if you look here, here's all of Barry's links and then mine. But here's the audio podcast is right here. Just want to show you that. So we have the first 3 there, and the 4th one will be there soon after we finish this.
And that's great for just like if you on the train or whatever, you can't see it. And do you think there's still value in the audio one, even though you can't see the screen? I suppose there's a lot of little nuggets that you get on the voice side of things as well.
Yeah, so you're asking the audience that they get value out of the audio.
Yeah. And I think because it would be worth noting if we need to describe things a little bit more for the audio podcast, if you guys are going to start listening to that, we might need to just describe a little bit more of what we're doing in the way that we talk. So that will be some useful feedback.
Yeah. So here is the full playlist as of right now, and I really need to put that into the comments of all of the videos. So I'm trying to think. So anyway, those are all there, and then Barry will have them all on his channel as well. Then we have the audio only, and we are live streaming to Barry's Facebook group, which is PowerApps Academy. Is that right?
Yeah.
If you do a search within, if you do a search within Facebook, you'll find that there. So we live stream there. Yeah, very cool, very cool. So hopefully, my channel, you get at what you're trying to find there. Looking at other comments here. So Abdi says, for row number to show, use this gallery item. Okay. Do you understand what he's saying there?
For row number to show, use this gallery item. Not exactly. Is that what you showed earlier on with the row number? I mean, that's the row ID. Or is he talking about the count of the rows of what row?
Yeah, for count the rows. So so if you look at me displaying the ID, I am using this item. So he says use this gallery item. So Abby, could you clarify what you mean by that? Because I don't know of anything that like what I would type here to get at that. So it's a little more complicated. I think it's probably too complicated for this episode for me to show how I know how to do it. So we'll keep that for the future.
Darren, just a quick clarification. Where it says this item, could you replace that with the gallery name, or do you not need to reference the gallery name in there at all? I mean, is it doing it behind the scenes?
Are you talking about this label right here? Or are you talking about outside the gallery?
Well, yeah, I suppose. Could you reference where you've put it in the gallery? Could you reference it outside the gallery and have have that number displaying outside of the gallery?
Absolutely. So you know how we use this little GUID here. I'll just use this label here. So the name of the gallery is Gal Contacts. That's a good name for a gallery. Okay. So for this label here, I'll reference the gallery, and there is a property of the gallery called selected. And then you could type .id and you can get at the ID.
Okay.
As I click it, you
see
how it's updated.
Okay. Cool.
And some people call that linking controls.
Yeah.
And looks like Johan has some good information for us. You can use the delay text input. I thought there was a property in there. I don't know, Barry, if you were asking me about that or somebody else was asking.
We said, I think when we were going on, do we need to add a search now button to wait for it to finish typing? But obviously there's a way to do it with the delay text.
Delay output. Okay. So I think, and I do remember coming across this, but I was a little foggy on it. So thanks for pointing that out, Johan. Okay. So if we type in here, okay, so I just cleared it. Okay. And it responded. Okay. So what does delay text or delay input does? So if I type in A, maybe it waits a second. Perhaps I might have to look that up.
What did you set on the delay?
What did I set?
Input? Yeah.
So it said false. So I changed it to true.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going down. Okay, so he's got something. I have sent you a formula, but I don't see it in the comments. Okay. Boom. With records. Yeah. Abby, that is I understand what you've got there, but this is right now we're sort of trying to cover one thing at a time, or trying to cover very at a basic level, and we could get to that, but it's just too much and we're already past the hour mark right now. So Barry, I know I wanted to cover search, I wanted to cover starts with, and I sort of wanted to put in sort. So Abby, we're gonna so if you guys are in the chat and wanted to copy his code, you can I'll have it up on the screen right now. Anybody can see it. Okay. He says, just in case anybody needs it. Okay, so I'm going to put it back up here just in case anybody needs it. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's good. Thanks for that, Abdi. And also, yeah, we'll make a note of some of those commands that you put in there, and we can cover them off individually.
Yeah.
In later
In
sections.
fact, I think I remember. Look at Matthew Devaney. Try to spell his name right. He actually had something. Yeah, PowerApps generate row numbers in a collection. So if you go to Matthew Devaney, okay, and he's got a YouTube channel as well. So that's what he goes through. Okay, so so you can get it there as well. All right, so let's move on. There's one last thing I want to cover here while you're doing searches, and a lot of times you want to be able to blank out what that search has open there. So the text box, the text input, I need to start calling it a text input, not a text box. There is a clear button. You see over here, clear button. We turn that on. If you click in there, you can see this little X that appears.
Right. And
so I can exit out.
What was the other one? A spell check? Was there a spell check in there?
Yeah, so text box actually can implement the spell check in the browser as well. Yeah. So if I turn that on, if I said AR, he's got a little red squiggly there, and I can right click.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I know we focused on using a text box because that's probably generally what we'd use. We won't go into combo boxes because I know that it gets quite complicated in terms of when you would use it. But you wouldn't use any other input methods for search, would you? It's mainly just those two. I mean, I've never done it. I can't see it in there.
Yeah, sometimes if I think about any other type of controls, I almost would reach for filter more than anything. But yeah, if you've got like a special string, use search. And in order, so if you're going to use SharePoint as a data source and you don't like that delegation issue, now one thing to note is, see this where I said data source provided. If you know that this filtering is going to bring it down to 2000, you can ignore this delegation issue because you're down below 2000. Okay. But let's say we don't know that. Okay. So we could rewrite this. Okay. So let me that. And there is another way of getting around this is to use starts with. And what that will do is it will match up the beginning of the string with whatever we type in there. And it's not quite as good as search, but it's a good alternative, to be honest. Have you ever ran into that, Barry?
I've never used starts with, so it'd be interesting to see how I use it.
So let me comment out this code because I don't want to get rid of it. Okay, so now we've got this code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out all the search stuff and sort of start with what we had before, which is the filter there. And Abdi says, thanks, Darren and Barry. Take care. Keep the good work. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks, Abdi. Keep well.
Yeah. And Johan says, wait for 3 keystrokes. So perhaps that's what it's supposed to wait for is 3 keystrokes before it actually does the search. So
I wonder what the use case is for that. Wait 3 keystrokes, just in case you made a mistake.
Maybe if somebody's typing really quick, you wouldn't want all those queries going every single keystroke. Maybe wait for maybe 1 second for it to actually do the search. That would probably be a good use case there. Okay, so we've got a filter here. And what you do is you could say and starts with is a function that returns a Boolean value. And when you're dealing with the criteria parameter for the filter, the second parameter, all of that evaluates to a Boolean. So what we had there before in our filter, it evaluated, it came down to a true or false value. So we're going to continue that with starts with, and we're going to say, we want this to start with. So it's looking at the text. Okay, so we're going to go take the text box here. I'll paste that up here. So starts with. And what we're looking for, the column, let's say title, right? Or is it the reverse? I need to make sure that that's right. So I just brought up the documentation here. So here's an example. Starts with hello world. And then, okay, so that would be the column in our case. And then the world is what we're searching for. Okay. So I had that backwards. So let me take that out. Okay. So notice we have no delegation issues. Now, if I start to type in Aaron, that's strange. I didn't think it would bring me Darren. And that's sort of weird. Probably because I used an or. So what we need to do is make this a little more let me comment this because I just want to deal with starts with right now before we get too complicated with the logic. Okay. You notice I don't get anything, but if I type in Darren, okay, it does give me that.
So when would we use the starts with versus the easier
the search?
Also, yeah, the search.
If you're working with SharePoint and you have a delegation concern that what you're getting is too much. Okay, with the search. So we'll go back in here and let's say we actually want. There's several ways we could do this, and it depends on what your business need is for the application. I could go in here and say or. Okay. And the country here, it says show all countries, or it matches the country there. I would want this Boolean evaluation to be executed with this one. I want that to be sort of coupled together. I want that to be tested within itself. Want it to test that, or it matches this criteria here. That's probably what I would do there. So now if I take this out, okay, show all countries. Well, if I go over to the UK, what do we have here? We have, I think what the issue is, it's still showing me everything. See, USA, UK, Germany, because everything starts with an empty string, right?
Yeah.
So what we need to do, we need to get a little bit more complicated here, and with our query, and we'll say, well, if the length of that text box .text is greater than 0, that way we know that we've got more than one in there. Okay. And starts with, okay. So it's not even gonna logically, it's not even going to use this if this is false because of that and.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we got UK. It's only displaying one person from UK. USA, and we got 2 there. But now if I type in Darren, it should have restricted that. But because we're using that or, we probably need to use an and here. Okay, there we go. And it depends. Like the user's like, oh, well, if I search for somebody, I want to search across all the countries. And other people are like, no, if I pick USA, I only want to search within USA. So it depends on what.
So what we're doing there, just so for those who might be a little bit newer to this, is we've said, if you just open up that again, we said filter our contact SharePoint list. The country is equal to the drop down selected, so we only want to show people who are in that country, or check show all countries dot value. So just talk us through again the whole filter command.
Yeah. So in order for a record to be returned from this data source, it needs to fall into one of these two categories. Either their countries matched up or that checkbox is checked.
Okay.
And then and it has to follow this criteria here, which is the length needs to be over 0 and it needs to start with whatever we type in there.
Right. And then you've nested that in that with the brackets, the ors and the and. That's all under the logic just after the first comma, right?
Yeah.
That's all nested.
And now that I'm dealing with it, what would make this much simpler is if we actually nested our filter statements. Okay. So for example, if I were to take all of this, I'll cut that out. Get rid of some of these spaces here. And then here we filter this. And then if we do it this way, I don't even think we need to check for that length. Okay. So it's going to check to make sure something is inside of there, and then it's going to return it, and then it will filter it down even more. Right. Do you like that better?
Yeah, I think so. Does that give us the same result?
Yeah, it should. So let's show all countries. Okay, now we have an error. Wow, it doesn't like anything now.
but I mean, this is quite complicated, right? When we nest in filters and even that. So
yeah,
I mean,
so yeah, even though we're covering basics right now, as you add more and more logic in, this is typical programmer stuff. It's stuff that I'm really used to, but yeah, it does get a little complicated. The more that you're using logic, even like mathematics you've got, or electrical engineering, you've got like doing anding and oring and using logic.
I think what might be quite useful is just to use the starts with without the other. So just get rid of the country options and just do a starts with versus a search.
Mm-hmm.
Without using the drop downs and the tick box. So it's just focusing on the text box, because that might it'd be easier to understand.
Okay, so you want to use that as an example instead. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's comment all this, so we don't want to lose it. And that error that just came, I don't know if you saw that error message. What that is, if you ever see that, look, it says request operation is invalid. The query is not valid. So see, now it's not even giving us the error. It's sort of weird. When I get a weird error like that, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just close down PowerApps and come back up, and it doesn't give me the error anymore. Maybe something got confused there. But yeah, so what we could do is we could just keep it super simple, and we'll just do the starts with, and we'll get rid of that comma there. Okay. So now none of this checkbox doesn't matter anymore, and this dropdown doesn't matter anymore. Okay. Yeah. So if I take that out, it's gonna look for, let's say both of our names has the letter A in there. I'm gonna type in A. Nope, nothing. What about B? We got Barry.
Okay. So it's just saying whatever starts with whatever you've typed in there, then it will search for that, and that will help with the delegation rather than it searching as. I mean, they're very similar, aren't they? I mean,
the search and the starts with.
Yeah. I mean, how quickly does the starts with start searching in the back? Because I suppose as you type in, it's going to be doing something similar as when you're doing the search.
Yeah, it would do it the way that it does the search, which is right away, unless you use that property
delay
that we talked about here. What is it? The delay input.
Yeah. Okay. So that's maybe the delay input. There. You do the start. You might do a starts with the delay input. That'll give you some time to do the first few letters before it actually then sends it to the SharePoint list to execute, and therefore you might get around the delegation issue. rather than the search, which as you type, it's going to start doing it right away.
So Barry, before when we did the search, we were able to search inside the phone number as well. So do you know how we would do this? Add on to this particular query to allow us to sort of do the search with the starts with the phone number. You know what we would do, how we would do that?
Well, I'm guessing at the moment we're searching only in the title, only in the title column, right?
So I got the title there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd want to add in some, I don't know, maybe and. So it starts with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'll do starts with, and I'm going to just copy that because I like to save myself time there. And instead of going in the title, we can go look in the phone. Okay. So it's going, oh, I don't want to say and because somebody's their name and their phone number isn't going to start with the same thing.
Or,
right?
or, yeah.
Okay. You could use an or. Okay. Yeah. So, well, let's go look at the phone numbers we used here. So there's 3 of us that start with 999. So now we could type 999 and it should give us the 3 records.
Okay.
Or we could type in. I need to select it. And it gives us that. All right.
Okay. I found that really useful because I didn't come into it. I didn't quite understand the difference, but now thanks to your guys' comments on the delay and the keystroke and Darren's explanations, I feel like I understand it 100% now, which is great.
Yeah, this is great. Now, did you know there's also a function that's called ends with?
No. I can imagine how it works, right?
That ends with, which doesn't look like SharePoint isn't gonna take that as a delegable query, but it's out there. You could use it if you want to. I don't think I've ever used it, but it's
everything ending with ing.
I'll change that back. Starts with. Now, at the end, what I typically do on the outer nest is I like to sort. So if we have all of our stuff here, right now it's not sorted at all. So let's use the sort. Have we covered sort at all in all of our sessions so far?
Yeah, we have. I use sort all the time, and it's always something you would put layer on right at the end, right? Because it's quite an easy one just to layer on.
I'll do that. I like to make sure everything's indented. So there we go. Sort. The first parameter is the data source. We give it a good table data source, and then the second one is the field. We actually have an optional ascending or descending. Ascending is default, so you just leave that off if you always like ascending. But yeah, you're number 1, I'm number 2, so on and so forth.
Cool.
So Barry, is there anything else that you'd like to cover tonight, or?
No, I think we did a good job I think you did a good job in explaining that. And I think we went. It got a bit complicated for me with all the nesting. But I think when we broke it apart, that gave a good and a clear understanding of how they are different and how they might be used. I think we could probably have a look at nesting as we go on, just how you layer those on top of each other to get them to work together, because I think that could be quite confusing for some people who haven't been using PowerApps that long. But that sort of stuff comes with practice, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's second nature for you at the moment.
Yeah.
I know I get confused when I have to nest all that sort of stuff. When to use brackets, when to use square brackets. Yeah, but that will come with time. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for joining. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, guys.